What would you do if on Christmas morning your sister was handed a brand new luxury car while you were given a plastic piggy bank with 2 crumpled dollar bills inside? Would you smile and swallow the humiliation? Or would you finally ask why your worth has always been measured in scraps? And what happens when the daughter who never demanded more decides she's done being invisible? The $2 Betrayal. I remember the silence first. Not the kind that soothes, but the kind that cuts through your chest, that makes the air too sharp to breathe. It was Christmas morning in the grand house where I grew up, the one with vaulted ceilings and portraits of ancestors glaring down as if they knew every secret I tried to keep. I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, surrounded by scraps of torn wrapping paper, but what I unwrapped that morning wasn't a gift. It was a message. Across the room, my younger sister, Lady Chelsea Collins, twirled like a child despite being 32, keys to her brand new BMW spinning between manicured fingers. She squealed, her laughter ricocheting off the walls, filling every inch of space. My father's face glowed with unfiltered pride. My mother clasped her hands, tears shining in her eyes as if she had just witnessed a miracle. All that noise, all that adoration, all for her. And then there was me. In my lap lay a plastic piggy bank, the kind you'd buy for a toddler, still tagged with the price, $1.99. My mother leaned forward, urging me to open it. I pulled out the stopper, my fingers numb, and 2 single-dollar bills fluttered to the floor. $2. My father chuckled. "It's the start of your future home fund. You're the responsible one, not like some people." His wink in Chelsea's direction earned a round of playful protest from her. Another ripple of laughter. But for me, the silence returned, stretching taut between my ribs. I had driven 7 hours through snow and mountain passes, rehearsing a speech about my promotion, senior structural engineer, earned through years of late nights and relentless effort. I had imagined their pride, imagined for once not being invisible. And yet, here I was, holding plastic and paper worth less than the ribbon wrapped around Chelsea's luxury car. $2. That number etched itself into my bones, cold and merciless. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a verdict. I smiled tightly, pretending it didn't matter, while the truth roared inside me. 34 years of moments just like this one flashed through my mind with terrifying clarity. Birthdays where she had ponies and castles while I had supermarket cake, graduations they skipped for her soccer games, student loans I shouldered alone while she wandered Europe on their dime. I'd believed stubbornly that if I worked hard enough, succeeded enough, gave enough, one day they would see me. One day I would earn what she received freely. But that morning, the illusion shattered. I placed the piggy bank on the coffee table. The hollow plastic made a sound that seemed to echo louder than Chelsea's squeals. "Excuse me," I whispered, rising to my feet. My voice didn't sound like mine. It belonged to someone breaking. I walked, didn't run, up the familiar staircase, past walls lined with family photographs where Chelsea's face appeared in nearly every frame, smiling, radiant, chosen. In the bathroom, I locked the door and stared at my reflection. Dry eyes, a face too composed. But inside, concrete hardened around my lungs. People talk about heartbreak like it's poetic, but in that moment, I knew it wasn't abstract. It was physical. My sternum ached as if someone pressed a knee against it. My heart contracted painfully, blood struggling to flow. And for the first time, I thought, this is what dying feels like. Not dramatic, just diminishing. Downstairs, laughter resumed, muffled by distance and walls. I pressed both palms against the cold marble counter, waiting for tears that wouldn't come. Only silence, heavy and suffocating. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay. Not just in that room, sir. Not just in that house, but in that role. The overlooked child. The responsible one. The invisible woman. 34 years had been enough. I lay awake that night in my childhood bedroom. The same 4 walls that had held every disappointment, listening to Chelsea and my parents planning her first road trip in the BMW. Each burst of laughter pushed me further toward the edge. At 2:17 a.m., I sat up. By 2:30, I was packed. By 3, I was standing in the kitchen, suitcase in one hand, my old house key in the other. I stared at that key for a long time. Cold metal, sharp in my palm, heavy with everything I'd carried. Then I placed it gently on the counter beside the coffee maker that would brew in a few hours, walked to the door, and stepped into the night. The snow was thick, the roads almost deserted, and the radio crooned an ironic carol about having a merry little Christmas. My Toyota's heater groaned against the cold. It was old, dented, unfashionable, but it had carried me faithfully through college, through late-night drives to job sites, through life built without anyone's help. Unlike the BMW gleaming in my parents' driveway, my Toyota had been earned. And as I drove south, headlights cutting through falling snow, I thought about those $2. $2 that had defined a lifetime. $2 that said, "You are worth less." You will always be less, but here's the question I couldn't shake. What if that was the lie I had lived by? What if the truth, the terrifying, dangerous truth, was that I could decide my worth myself? That question burned brighter than any Christmas light behind me, brighter than the future my parents had mapped out without me. It was the question that would lead me into storms, into revelations, into a battle I had never chosen but could no longer avoid. I didn't know it then, but leaving that key on the counter wasn't just walking out of a house. It was crossing a line I would never return from. And everything would change because of it. Chains of blood. Snow blurred into a pale ribbon on the windshield, the world beyond reduced to shadows and slush. My hands clenched the steering wheel as though letting go might mean vanishing altogether. Behind me, Portland slept. Ahead, nothing but miles of uncertainty. Have you ever driven away from everything you've ever known, not because you wanted to, but because you couldn't survive if you stayed? That was me at 3:42 a.m., the Toyota rattling under the weight of silence. The phone vibrated on the passenger seat. My mother's face lit the screen. Did she call to ask if I was safe? No. Her message was simple, cold, utilitarian. Did you remember to pay the cabin's electric bill before leaving Seattle? Not one word about me, about the storm outside, about the fact that their eldest daughter was alone on a highway in the middle of the night. What kind of family remembers the bills, but forgets the beating heart of their child? I ignored the call, but it came again, and again. Father this time, his voicemail full of thunder. Return the car or I'll report it stolen. My car, the one I had worked, sweated, sacrificed to pay off. Yet in his eyes, it was never mine. It was only on loan, a reminder that I lived by his permission. Is that what family is supposed to feel like? A set of invisible debts, each one shackled around your wrists? The storm worsened. A semi-truck tore past, spraying ice across my windshield, and for a terrifying 3 seconds, I drove blind. My heart thundered so loudly it drowned out the wipers, each beat whispering, "You don't matter. You never mattered." And maybe that was true. Or maybe it was the lie that had shaped every year of my life. At dawn, my phone buzzed again, but this time, not from them. The name glowing on the screen stopped me cold. Monica, my old college roommate. A friend who had seen the evidence firsthand. The lopsided packages, the empty dorm rooms when holidays came, the way I carried burdens no one else even noticed. I answered, my voice hollow. "Somewhere in Southern Oregon. Come to San Francisco," she said firmly, the kind of firmness that doesn't ask, it rescues. "Stay with me. Family doesn't treat family like this." I wanted to argue, to refuse. That was my reflex. Don't inconvenience anyone. Don't take up space. But then she said something that cracked me wide open. "You've spent your whole life being the helper. Let someone help you for once." Help. Such a small word. But to me, it felt like a foreign language, something dangerous. What happens when you've been taught that your value lies in never needing anyone? What happens when someone offers you what you've never been allowed to accept? I whispered the word that changed everything. "Okay." The line went quiet. Then her voice softened. "Text me your location every hour. Drive safe. I'll make up the guest room." And just like that, the weight on my chest loosened for the first time since I'd left Portland. A warm welcome to you all from Dran. If this story already grips your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every click and share gives us the strength to bring you more stories like this, stories that pierce the silence and reveal the truths families hide. By the time I crossed into California, the rising sun painted the horizon gold. 17 missed calls, 32 messages. I silenced them all. What does silence feel like after years of being drowned by voices that dismiss you? Heavier than accusations, lighter than air. Silence at last was mine. I stopped at a roadside diner, a neon open sign buzzing faintly in the morning light. Inside, a waitress with silver streaks in her hair poured me coffee without asking. "Rough night?" she said. "Rough life," I muttered, embarrassed by how bitter it sounded. She didn't flinch. "Honey, I've been serving coffee 40 years. I know heartbreak when I see it. Family or boyfriend?" "Family." She nodded, slid the menu across. Then she said something so simple it rooted itself in my chest. Blood makes you related. Love and respect make you family. Isn't that the truth we're all afraid to admit? That sometimes the people who share your blood are the same people who drain it from you? I sat there, staring out at the snow dissolving on the window, her words circling in my mind. Love and respect. I'd had one, but never the other. Could I really call it family if both weren't present? 3 weeks later, I was still in San Francisco. Their calls had shifted from confusion to concern to manipulation wrapped in parental authority. "You're selfish. You're ungrateful. You're destroying us." I almost believed them. That's the thing about chains of blood. They don't just hold your body, they invade your mind. But then, in a small apartment with terracotta walls and the scent of Monica's cooking in the air, I rewrote an email 14 times before finally hitting send. A transfer request to my firm's San Francisco office. No family favors, no safety net, just me, my work, my worth. Approval came 3 hours later, swift and final. Isn't it strange how the world outside can recognize your value instantly, while the people closest to you spend decades pretending not to see? That night, I placed the piggy bank on the dresser of my borrowed room. I turned it over in my hands, felt its hollow plastic body, its absurd weight. $2 inside had once been my sentence. Now it was my evidence. The story wasn't finished, not by a long shot, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving inside their narrative. I was writing my own. And that, dear listeners, is where the true confrontation begins, because running away is only the first step. The real battle comes when you stop running and decide to face what you left behind. The ledger of truth. The walls of my new apartment in San Francisco were bare, painted a muted beige, but to me they felt like possibility. Each night I returned from work, the silence was mine. Not a punishment, not a reminder of exclusion, but a space I controlled. Yet even within this fragile sanctuary, the echoes of my family's voices followed me. Every call I didn't answer, every voicemail I deleted, carried the same poison, guilt sharpened into accusation. You're ungrateful. You're selfish. You'll regret this. And sometimes, alone in the dim light of my desk lamp, I almost believed them. But then came the breakthrough, the moment when therapy forced me to name it out loud. Favoritism. One word, small but heavy, hanging in the air like a newly discovered truth. I had lived inside it so long I thought it was normal. To say it aloud was to shatter the silence. Do you know the feeling when a pattern you've ignored for decades suddenly becomes undeniable, like ink bleeding across a page until it blots everything out? That was my revelation. I began noticing the pattern everywhere. The letters from university reminding me of the loans I'd shouldered alone. The photo albums where my sister's face smiled on every page while mine barely flickered in the background. Even the birthday cards, hers overflowing with praise and adoration, mine practical and restrained. We always knew you'd be fine. How many ways can a family say, "You don't need us. You don't deserve more"? One night, I pulled the piggy bank from my shelf. Its hollow weight mocked me. But instead of discarding it, I began a ritual. Each week, I slid a crisp $2 bill inside, not as a reminder of what they thought I was worth, but as proof that I could redefine the meaning. It wasn't a sentence anymore. It was evidence. Evidence that I had survived, that I was rebuilding myself piece by piece. Yet the pressure never let up. Have you ever noticed that when you begin to pull away, manipulators only tighten their grip? The calls grew darker. Rumors spread through old colleagues. I had suffered a breakdown. I was living in squalor. Chelsea posted carefully filtered photos on social media, eyes wide with manufactured concern, captions whispering about family heartbreak. The world was invited to pity me, to see me as broken. But what happens when the story they tell about you collides with the truth you're living? Which one wins? At work, No one knew the narrative my parents spun. They saw me only as the woman who calculated with precision, who led her team with quiet authority, who completed projects ahead of schedule. The contrast was startling. At home, I was worthless. At work, I was indispensable. Could both be true? Or had I spent my whole life swallowing a lie? The more I asked these questions, the more my anger sharpened into clarity. And clarity is dangerous. It's the point where guilt loses its power, where fear begins to crumble. Still, tension coiled around me like barbed wire. I joined a pottery class at Monica's urging, thinking it would be a harmless distraction. But even there, my hands shook as I pressed clay into shape. The instructor whispered, "Don't force it. Listen to what it wants to become." The words pierced deeper than she intended. For years, I had been forced into a shape that wasn't mine, molded by expectations that crushed instead of nurtured. What if I finally allowed myself to become what I wanted? Week after week, bowls and vases filled my windowsills. Imperfect, uneven, but undeniably mine. Each one a rebellion. Each one a declaration. I was no longer invisible. I was creating. And yet, the storm outside my sanctuary brewed stronger. Family doesn't give up territory easily. They called again, this time with new tactics. My father's voice boomed. "This childish behavior has gone on long enough. Return to Portland, or I'll make sure you regret it." My mother wept into the phone. "My health is failing. Do you want to be the cause of my death?" And Chelsea chimed in, "We're worried about you. Everyone thinks you've lost your mind." Here's the question that haunted me at night. Was their concern ever real, or was it just another form of control? Therapy helped me see what I had been blind to. My father was the architect of financial control. My mother was the custodian of emotional guilt. Together, they had built a perfect system, one that ensured my silence, my compliance, my eternal role as the responsible daughter who asked for nothing. But systems can crack when light filters in. And for the first time, I held the light. The shift was subtle at first. I stopped answering. I stopped explaining. I stopped defending myself. Instead, I documented. I collected evidence. Bank records of my loans against Chelsea's fully funded education. Photographs of our birthdays. Side by side. Every scrap of proof that my feelings weren't paranoia. They were fact. Do you know how liberating it feels when you realize you can prove the truth of your own pain? It doesn't erase the wound, but it makes the scar undeniable. Still, their shadow lingered. One evening, Monica dropped lunch at my office. She caught Chelsea waiting in the lobby, her polished smile cracking when Monica stepped between us. "She's in a meeting," Monica said coolly, "and she'll stay in meetings for uninvited guests." For the first time, I saw it clearly. The fortress I was building had allies. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. And yet, beneath the growing strength, fear still lived. Because I knew the confrontation was coming. Families like mine don't fade quietly into the background. They rally, they conspire, they prepare their next ambush. And I couldn't shake the question. When that moment comes, will I stand firm? Or will the old reflexes drag me back into their grasp? The answer waited in the shadows, closer than I dared to imagine. The wedding ambush. The rehearsal dinner glowed with golden chandeliers and polite laughter, but beneath the polished veneer, I felt something darker pulsing. Every step I took into the Harrington estate was weighted, each face turning toward me as if I were a ghost returned from exile. 7 months since I had walked out on Christmas morning, and now here I was, stepping into their world again. I had imagined this moment countless times, but the air still sliced sharp, my chest tightening with each breath. Would I falter under their gaze? Or had the woman I had become finally eclipsed the daughter they had diminished? The summons came sooner than I expected. "Your parents want to see you. In the library. They said it's important." The words slid into my ear like a warning. I knew what awaited behind that heavy oak door, an ambush disguised as family concern. My heart hammered, but I walked toward it anyway. What choice did I have? You can't outrun shadows forever. The library was staged like a tribunal. Father pacing by the fireplace, his movements sharp, his jaw set. Mother perched in a high-backed chair, tissues clutched dramatically in her hand. Chelsea near the window, her dress glittering, but her eyes restless. The empty chair in the center of the room waited for me like a trap. "This can't wait any longer," Father announced, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. I remained by the door. I'm listening. You leaving destroyed this family, Chelsea said, her voice trembling with rehearsed sincerity. Dad lost his job. Mom's in therapy. We're selling the house. The words struck like stones, each designed to wound, to drag me back into the role of savior. Was it true? Or was it the same script they'd always used? Financial crisis, health concerns, guilt, all woven together into a net I was expected to step back into. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, slowly, I set my purse on the table and pulled out the first item, a leather-bound photo album. I opened it across my lap and turned the pages deliberately. Side-by-side photographs filled the silence. Chelsea's extravagant princess parties with ponies and castles, my own modest cakes and dollar store balloons, family vacations where she beamed center stage while I lingered at the edges. The evidence spoke louder than any accusation I could make. Ridiculous, Father barked, his face darkening. We always treated you both equally. I pulled out the second item, a folder of bank statements. My student loans, $67,000. Every cent mine to carry. Chelsea's tuition, fully funded, including her year in Europe for artistic inspiration. Chelsea shifted uncomfortably. That's not fair. You chose engineering. Yes, I replied evenly. I chose a passion that built stability, that paid for every roof over my head. And you chose art. The difference is that one choice was deemed worthy of investment and the other wasn't. Not because of money, but because of value. My value. Mother's voice cracked. We didn't have the money when you went to college. Things changed by the time. Don't lie. My tone cut through the room. Dad's promotion came when I was 16. Grandma's inheritance arrived before my freshman year. You had the money. You simply chose not to spend it on me. The room went still. For once, there were no quick retorts, just the sound of their myth unraveling. Then I pulled out the final piece, the piggy bank. I placed it on the table with deliberate care. Its hollow thud echoed through the silence. I twisted out the stopper, and dozens of crisp $2 bills spilled across the polished wood, scattering like fallen leaves. For every week since Christmas, I've saved one of these, I explained. Not because I needed the money, but because you taught me what I was worth. $2. Week after week, I proved to myself that I am worth more. Father's face flushed crimson. This is nonsense. You've let your therapist fill your head with lies. I leaned forward, steady and unflinching. No, Father. For the first time in my life, I'm speaking the truth. My truth. And you can't silence it anymore. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match. For the first time, they had no script. I rose from the chair, gathering my folder and album. I don't want apologies, I said. I want change, family therapy, respect for my boundaries, nothing less. Mother's tears came then, but they were different, no longer the weaponized sobs I had seen all my life. This time they trembled on her lashes, uncertain, exposed. We'll do it, she whispered. Whatever it takes. I left the bills scattered across the table. Keep them, I said, hand on the door. A reminder of what happens when you measure one child against another. As I stepped out into the corridor, voices from the party floated through the halls. Music, laughter, the clinking of glasses. Outside that library, life continued. But inside me, a battle had ended. I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was no longer the girl who accepted scraps. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like. It may seem like a small action, but for us, it's a huge encouragement that fuels our passion to bring you even more captivating real-life stories. Back in the banquet hall, my cousin Vanessa glowed in her pre-wedding joy. Chelsea approached me on the terrace, her voice low. The BMW got repossessed, she confessed, her confidence cracking. I'm drowning in debt. Dad can't help anymore. I don't know how to do this, Iris. I never learned to stand on my own. Once, I would have rushed in with solutions, carried her burdens on my shoulders. But this time, I placed my hand gently on her arm. That sounds hard, I said quietly. Compassion, but not rescue. I can help you build a budget, but I can't fix this for you. Her eyes widened, startled at my restraint. And in that moment, I knew the real twist. It wasn't just me who had changed. The entire structure of our family, built on favoritism and imbalance, was beginning to crack. Fear still lingered, yes, but so did something else. Something I had never truly felt until that night. Hope. The price of freedom. Christmas sunlight spilled through the wide windows of my San Francisco apartment. catching the steam that rose from mugs of mulled cider on the table. Laughter curled around the room, genuine and unforced, the kind that didn't sting or exclude. Monica leaned against the counter, Elliot carved the turkey, and friends from work filled the chairs with warmth. This time, there was no performance, no competition, no invisible ledger tallying who deserved more. For the first time, Christmas wasn't a battlefield. It was a homecoming to myself. The piggy bank still sat on the mantel, not hidden, not mocked, but displayed. Inside were dozens of crisp $2 bills, one for each week since I had walked away. Each one a marker, not of my diminishment, but of my survival, my decision to claim worth when no one else would. It reminded me that sometimes the smallest betrayals reveal the largest truths. My phone buzzed with a monthly call. Chelsea's face filled the screen, her background modest now, shadows under her eyes from long shifts. "Merry Christmas," she said softly. "Your place looks beautiful. You look happy." There was no envy in her tone, only weariness and a faint spark of admiration. She admitted she was learning to manage on her own, fumbling, but trying. For the first time, she didn't ask me to fix it for her. That alone felt like change. Later that evening, after the dishes were stacked and the laughter settled into memory, I stepped onto the balcony. San Francisco Bay stretched before me, the bridges glowing against the night sky, their reflections trembling on the dark water. Elliot joined me, wrapping a blanket over my shoulders. "Deep thoughts again?" he teased gently. "Not deep," I whispered. "Just grateful." Because here was the twist no one saw coming. I thought leaving my family meant losing everything. But what I lost was the weight of being unseen. What I found was myself. And when you finally choose yourself, the world doesn't shrink. It expands. In the months that followed, the ripples reached further. My father, stripped of his illusions of power, sat in the folding chairs of AA meetings. My mother poured her energy into volunteering at a community center instead of rehearsing guilt trips. Chelsea learned how to budget, how to live smaller but steadier. It was far from perfect. There were no guarantees. But change had finally begun, not because I demanded it, but because I refused to carry their burdens anymore. Sometimes healing begins when one person chooses to step away. On my bookshelf sat another relic, my childhood dollhouse. My mother had mailed it to me, the deed papers enclosed, a quiet gesture of acknowledgement. Not an apology, but perhaps the closest she knew how to come. I didn't need the dollhouse, but I kept it anyway, not as a bridge back to the past, but as proof that even those who wounded us can, eventually, learn another language besides silence. And maybe that's the real resolution, isn't it? Life rarely hands us perfect endings wrapped in bows. Sometimes the family never fully changes. Sometimes the apologies never arrive. But what matters most is not what they give you. It's what you choose to claim for yourself. Standing on that balcony, I thought of all the years I had lived under a false definition of family. Blood had made me related, but it had never made me safe. Love without respect had been nothing more than possession. The true family I had found wasn't bound by name or obligation, but by choice, by care freely given. So I ask you, listening now, what is your $2? What is the small symbol that has been used to measure your worth, to convince you you're less than you are? And what would happen if you turned it into your reminder, your evidence, your rebellion? The answer isn't easy. It may hurt. It may cost more than you think you can pay. But freedom always asks a price. And the worth you reclaim will outlast the pain. If you walk away with nothing else from my story, let it be this. You are allowed to draw the line. You are allowed to redefine your worth. You are allowed to claim a life that is not measured by the scraps someone else hands you, but by the dignity you refuse to surrender. That night, as the city hummed below and the last embers of laughter lingered in the apartment behind me, I whispered the words that had carried me through every mile of snow, every sleepless night, every confrontation that shook me. Worth isn't given. Worth is claimed. And I had claimed mine. When I look back on everything, the hollow plastic piggy bank, the years of being the responsible one, the countless moments where silence replaced affection, it feels like watching someone else's life. Yet it was mine. For decades, I believed that being capable meant I deserved less. I accepted scraps because I thought that was strength. I told myself love didn't have to be equal. that being overlooked was the price of independence. But the truth is simple, and it nearly broke me to discover it. Capability does not make you unworthy. Responsibility is not a reason to be ignored. And love without respect is not love at all. Walking away from my family wasn't just about leaving a house on Christmas morning. It was about leaving behind an identity I never chose. The daughter who endured, the sister who gave, the woman who never asked for more. I thought leaving meant losing everything, but instead, it gave me the chance to build a life on my own terms. In San Francisco, I found laughter that didn't sting, relationships that didn't drain, and a sense of self I had buried beneath years of trying to earn what should have been freely given. The story doesn't resolve in perfection. My parents didn't suddenly transform into saints. My sister didn't become flawless overnight, and I didn't erase the scars of neglect. But I no longer carry the burden of fixing them. I carry only myself, and that is enough. The lesson here is one I wish I had learned years earlier. You are allowed to set boundaries, even with family. You are allowed to reject the role they've forced upon you. You are allowed to claim your worth without apology. Too many of us confuse endurance with loyalty, silence with love, and sacrifice with strength. But true strength is found in the courage to walk away from what diminishes you and toward what nurtures you. Ask yourself, what patterns have you accepted simply because they've always been there? What lies about your worth have you mistaken for truth? And what small step could you take today to begin reclaiming the dignity you've always deserved? It won't be easy. The voices that benefit from your silence will get louder when you speak. But freedom always begins with a single choice: to stop shrinking and start standing. And if this story resonated with you, I invite you to join the DRAN community, where we share more stories that challenge, inspire, and heal. Be part of the conversations that matter, and don't walk your journey alone. And before you go, if you found value here, please subscribe to the channel. It may feel like a small click, but for us, it is a powerful encouragement that fuels our passion to bring you even more captivating stories that speak to the heart.